this video, we will look at how you can avoid making common mistakes in the IELTS listening exam. So let's begin. Now, according to the official IDP IELTS website, people make more mistakes in the listening section of the exam more than any other part of the IELTS exam. And the main reason for that is because in the listening exam, you only get one chance to listen to the audio. So if you compare that to the reading exam, for example, the reading text, you can read that over and over again. But in the listening, you only get one chance. But don't worry, because if you follow these tips, then hopefully you will be more likely to get a higher score. So the first thing that you can do to avoid making mistakes in the listening exam is to follow the instructions and understand the questions. So the listening exam consists of 4 different parts, and each part of the exam contains different question types. So for example, you might see multiple choice questions and you might see gap fill questions. And for each question type, you will have some time to prepare for it. Now, it is important to note that it can be very difficult to concentrate on reading the question types and listening to the audio at the same time. So to help you out, you can do the following 4 things. First, read the question before you listen to the recording. That way you will know what to pay attention to when the audio is playing. The second thing that you can do is check the type of answer that you need to write. So for example, do you have to select an option from a box, or do you just need to write a single letter? The third thing that you can do is use a pencil to underline key information in the question. This will also help you focus on what to listen out for in the audio. And the fourth thing that you can do is check your answers after the audio has played, and also prepare yourself for the next set of questions. Okay, now the second tip is to understand specific information. Now, it can be very difficult to understand which parts of the audio is actually important and which parts you need to answer the questions. So for example, when you are filling out a form, which is part of the listening exam, you will need to focus on key information such as somebody's first and surname, maybe their email address and their phone number. So to help you understand which information you should focus on, you can do these 4 things. Read the question carefully. That will help you understand the information you're looking for. Spend some time studying the information given to you and then focus on the instructions. And the third thing that you can do is look out for any synonyms for any key words, because most likely they might be used in the audio. So to help you understand the question, you can do the following things. Okay, so the third tip is based on following a description. So part 2 of the listening test involves answering questions such as labeling a map, a diagram, or a plan. So you will need to understand key information such as how something might work, where something is, and what something is made up of. So for example, you might be given a task where you need to identify places, buildings, parts or stages of a process. So there will be keywords in the recording to help you, and these keywords may be verbs and adjectives, for example, size, shape, or quality. There might be other keywords that tell you about directions, for example, north, south, east, west. And you might be given keywords such as prepositions, for example, in front of, next to, or behind. So it is important for you to familiarize yourself with these key pieces of information. Okay, so the next tip is based on part 3 of the listening exam, and that is all to do with understanding a conversation. So in part 3 of the listening test, you will listen to a conversation with up to 4 people where they talk about a study-related topic. And for this task, you will be asked to listen for important facts, ideas, reasons, views, or opinions. Now, part 3 of the listening test can be very confusing because it can be difficult to try to identify who is talking and what they are saying. Because remember, this part of the exam consists of 4 people talking amongst each other. So here's what you can do. Read the text before you start listening to the audio. The second thing that you can do is note down any information about the speakers, their relationships, and how it relates to the situation. Now, by doing this, it can help you anticipate which speaker is about to speak next, and it might also help you predict what they might talk about. So make sure you do this, and that will help you avoid making any silly mistakes. Okay, so the next tip is to follow a lecture and listen out for keywords. So let me explain. Each section of the listening exam gets more and more difficult as you go on. So that means that section 1 is the easiest, section 2 gets a little bit harder, section 3 is a little bit more harder, and section 4 is the hardest section out of all of them. So in section 4, you will listen to a talk or a lecture about an academic subject. For example, a university lecture. So what you should do is try to hear out and focus on any signpost words that the lecturer might use, and this will help you understand the different stages of the talk. So signpost words that you can look out for are just words that tell you where in the lecture we are. So for example, if somebody says firstly, then you know that they are towards the beginning of their lecture, and if somebody says finally, then you would understand that they are towards the end of the lecture. So on your screen are some examples of signpost words that you can look out for. So we have firstly, on the other hand, although, because, to name a few, and finally. Now these are just some examples of signpost language, not all. Now the reason why signpost language is important because it can give you an idea of where in the lecture we are, and more importantly, it might give you some indication about what information is about to come next. And this way you will have a better ideas of what to expect from the speakers. So again, if you look at the example we mentioned earlier, if the lecturer says finally and you have nothing written down, then you will know that maybe they're about to say something important because I haven't got an answer written down, therefore they might say the answer. So learn signpost language if you don't know it already, and try to identify this in the audio. Okay, so the next tip is all to do with the number of words that you should write down for your answers. So the listening test will clearly indicate how many words you need to write down for your answers. So for example, you might see a question like this, which says no more than 1 word, or no more than 2 words, and or a number. So because of this, it is important that you read the word count instructions carefully to avoid adding in extra words. So for example, if the question asks you to write down 1 word and you write down the answer, the bus, unfortunately, you will not get the mark for that answer because the instructions asked you to write down 1 word and you wrote the bus, even though bus might be the correct answer. So be very careful when following the instructions and pay extra attention to the word count. Now the next tip is all to do with spelling. Writing out your answers with the correct spelling is essential for the listening exam. So if you write down the answer incorrectly, then you will get this question wrong. You won't get the mark for it. So what you should do here is take lots of practice tests before your actual exam day. Ideally, you want to take practice tests online, and that is because it will help you understand whether you got the answer wrong because of your spelling, or you got the answer wrong just because you didn't know the answer. And if you get the answer wrong because of the spelling, then that should let you know that spelling in these words is something that you should focus on. Also, if you are planning on taking the paper-based exam, then you will be given an extra 10 minutes after your listening exam to transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer paper. So what you should do in this case is, once you've transferred your answers, double check your spelling, just in case you might have made an error in the answer booklet. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you benefited from this video, make sure to check out this video on the screen, which will help you improve your listening score. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.